Hey, if you are in any kind of non-traditional ministry setting, I think you're really going to enjoy today's show. Welcome to Jesus in the Upper Left, where we're talking about gospel multiplication in the Pacific Northwest. Hey, my name is Gabe Kolstad, and I am excited to be here with you for Jesus in the Upper Left with my good friend, Ahshuwah Hawthorne of Brilliance Labs. And you might be kind of wondering what in the world, when I say the words Brilliance Labs, that might not be something you're familiar with. And I'd love it. It's a great name for an organization. But I want to just jump right in because there's some really interesting stuff happening, a very creative approach to kingdom multiplication and expansion that Ahshuwah has been a part of. And so, hi, Ahshuwah, how you doing?
What's up, Gabe?
Hey.
You kind of turned the tables on me.
I sure
now
did.
You're asking me questions.
I know. Yeah, you're the question asker of the century, but yeah, now you get to sit there and answer them. So really fun opportunity here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who is Ahshuwah and what is Brilliance Labs?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking and having me on the show.
Yeah.
So I grew up on the Big Island of Hawaii in a pretty, you could say, more progressive, spiritually minded, maybe new agey kind of community and family background.
Okay.
And Jesus got a hold of me when I was in high school, and that radically shifted and transformed my life and my direction that I was heading. And I did a little film school after high school, and then felt called into the ministry. And I studied at Multnomah.
Where did you go to film school?
Loyola Marymount in LA.
Really? Okay. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a film school dropout, though. I mean,
Okay.
I worked on films on the weekends and the older students and all that. I learned a bunch. I still do media and video stuff. I got my run and gun kit and enjoy that. But Jesus, he said, no, I want you to study the word and prepare for ministry. So I did that at the school formerly known as Multnomah Bible College.
Okay.
Still a good school, but now it's a university. And then graduated, did some church planting back in my hometown, a little kind of hippie hodunk town on the Big Island of Hawaii. Reached a bunch of pagans. God bless that. Good season in life. The church is still going through all its ups and downs and multiple lava flows and and hurricanes and crazy things that happen.
Yeah.
When you live on a tropical island in the middle of an ocean.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and then got sent out as a missionary from the church there in Hawaii, and we moved back to Portland because we had family here, a lot of community. I needed kind of you could say a pit stop from church planting.
Okay.
I went quickly from graduation from college, marriage, start a church, start having kids very quickly, and it was just time to kind of change the tires, you could say. And so God was kind, and we had a season of kind of a pit stop and more behind the scenes ministry, and then we've been serving in, we could say, like urban missions here in Portland since 2010.
Okay, since 2010. All right, that's awesome. So you have a family. Tell us a little about your family.
Yeah, I have a wife. We'll celebrate our 18th anniversary this next month. We're at Bible College. We have 7 kids, ages 4 to 17.
Busy home.
Yeah, always is.
Yeah.
We're one of our few friends that we bought houses back, a decade ago now. But we've grown our family, but never actually moved out of our house. We've just kind of done the old traditional style where you just add more rooms to your house as the family grows. So we've kind of done that.
That's fantastic. Well, I love it. Well, tell us about Brilliance Labs, because it's such a unique name, and probably all of us who've been involved in ministry wish our churches had a name like that. But what is Brilliance Labs?
Yeah, I'm very much in that kind of emerging church generation when I was church planting in mid 2000s, and everyone, their minds were blown. Whoa, we don't need Baptist in our name, and we can just find cool words in the dictionary.
Right.
And yeah. So I named my church Grassroots Church.
Okay.
So speaking of fun names, that was a little challenging in our very
because that kind of probably calls out some unique elements of what the ministry was like that you did. Right?
Yeah. But it brings some very aromatic things to mind.
Okay.
So, but anyway, So yeah, we actually had a great. I could shout out my buddy Eliezer Ruiz, who has a branding company called Odd Notion, and he did a full branding sprint for us. So that's where the name came out of.
Is that right?
Was a lot of work wrestling through. Okay, who are we as an organization, and how do we communicate that most effectively to our audience? But yeah, the idea of kind of what we landed on was Brilliance Labs. So Brilliance speaks to, if you look it up in the dictionary, you got three things. It speaks to like brightness and glory, or brilliance, and that reminds us of God's glory. That all that we do is for His glory. It also it speaks to if you have a monitor, and there's like one of the things you can turn up is brilliance on the monitor, is the color saturation. And so one of our goals as an organization is to empower and serve under-resourced communities, and to be, you could say, culture forward in the way that we engage with the diversity of people that are in our city of Portland. So it's kind of turning up the color and celebrating that diversity in our community. And then finally, Brilliant also speaks to a brilliant idea. And we want to come alongside kingdom entrepreneurs and folks that see problems in their community and say, hey, I'm going to try to solve that. I'm going to try to make a difference with that. And we believe that God-given crazy ideas and odd notions are brilliant ideas with potential. So we want to get behind those and support those.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, I want to hear a little bit more in a few about the kinds of things you're talking about. And I think our listeners are going to love to hear and see. For me, when I hear what you're doing, it kind of just pops up all these new ideas. I start looking at things through a different lens, because I'm like, wait a minute, the possibilities here are endless. And with a little bit of support, so many things are possible. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I do want to kind of back the train up a little bit and ask you the question, well, how did Brilliance Labs come into being?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of an accident of history, but you could also say a providential work that God prepared. It goes all the way back to Central Bible Church, which if you've been in the east side of Portland for a while, you know the Christian community. You know this church is a large cinder block building on the hill of Gleason, and I think it's 92nd.
And hey, by the way, I'm also a Multnomah grad. So yeah, I remember walking up the hill every time for chapel to Central Bible Auditorium, because that's where we did chapel. So I'm very familiar with the building you're talking about.
Yeah. So it has a long history. And so to make the long story short, it's been very fruitful in the city, but it's also had been in decline for a number of years, and had gone through a number of pastoral transitions. And there were even, in its 88-year history, there were even several church splits and challenges. And I would say it never got back to, you could say, its former glory. And we could look at pictures of the launch day when that building was first built. And the late great Dr. John Mitchell preached from that pulpit in this huge auditorium, and it's packed. I don't know if it's like 1,200 people in this packed house. But from that, but now about 90 plus years ago, it never had that same glory, and over the years had declined. And so I was serving as a missionary in residence, trying to help mobilize folks in that congregation to local missions. And there was a pastoral transition. I was asked to come help and serve on the elder team. I did some preaching ministry, and over about the next 2 years, the leadership team just really wrestled through, okay, what's next for this church congregation? And we were running significantly in the red. That building, as beautiful as it is, had a lot of, and actually, it's not known for its beauty, but it's very functional if you have a large congregation. But if you have a small congregation, right, of about 100 folks, which is what CB had at the time, it was a big space, and there was a lot of deferred maintenance, actually several millions in deferred maintenance, and there were seismic challenges, and so the leadership team brought to the congregation a vision for a strategic closure of the church, and we essentially said we believe God's leading us to close Central Bible Church and invest its resources back into the city and into the kingdom of God. And we got some counsel from other folks that have navigated church closures, and the counsel was do it quickly. Like, I know it's going to be painful, but pull off the Band-Aid quickly. And so we did that. We basically announced it at the beginning of February 2020, after having spent about 2 months praying through it, preparing, getting counsel. The leadership team announced it and said, in 2 weeks, we're going to be having a congregational vote to approve this decision or not. But this is what we want to do with closing the church and investing the resources. And then we had follow-up meetings. We brought in former pastors and leaders through the history of Central Bible to come and share and preach. We did that congregational meeting. There's lots of emotions, lots of different thoughts and discussions. But when it came down to it, the congregation voted 97% affirmation. Yes, we think this is the right thing to do. And then we had one more Sunday as a celebration service, and a packed house. And then we stopped gathering as a church, which in the crazy providence of God, 2 weeks later, so we had a final service, and then 2 weeks from that day, the governor said churches may no longer meet in the state of Oregon. And so when we had started the closure, COVID was like, unless you lived in Wuhan, China, you didn't know about this thing.
Yeah.
And so just starting that process and then coming to that final day and then realizing, wow, like what would this been like? We could not have done these congregational meetings. And with our operating in the red, if we had tried to operate through COVID, that was hard enough for strong, healthy churches, let alone churches that were significantly underfunded and had excessive overhead. And that's just where we were at, even after letting go staff and downsizing that happened. So we feel like God really spared us that difficult COVID period. And it was hard for us as a congregation because we kind of scattered, and we recommended other churches. We talked to other pastors and said, hey, we think some folks are going to come visit you and all that. But as one of the Central Bible diaspora myself, it was hard. We found a great church at Trinity Church of Portland, but literally our first 6 months attending the church was watching a screen on Sunday mornings.
Yep.
We had never been there in person. So it was hard, but that's, we trust God with his wisdom.
Totally amazing timing that God led you to, which you can't just pass that up. Like, God was obviously working behind the scenes in that, because too many reasons why that would, you shifted just a little bit. It's like they say, if the sun was a foot closer to the earth or whatever, we'd burn up, but it's like that, where it wouldn't have worked. But I think the other thing that really, really surprises me is that there was a congregation of 100 people, which, you could look across the landscape of a city and go, well, honestly, there's a lot of churches smaller than that. But these people had a will for the city. And so there was something right about the vision casting and all that, because what did you say? 97% voted in favor of this move.
Yeah.
So that's pretty killer. And to me, it almost calls out, like, if you're listening to this or watching this, and maybe you're not a part of our city yet, or you're coming here, you're thinking about moving here, one of the things you might start to sniff out is there seems to be a collective church at work here in many ways. And so there is a broader body of Christ aspect to what's happening in our city. We're so grateful for that. And even in this, I kind of sense that. I kind of sense that it was, this was in concert with other things. And it's a huge advantage, honestly, of doing ministry here, which I think we need to call out as much as we can, because there's plenty of disadvantages and hard things about doing ministry. One of the greatest things is how the body of Christ functions here. So that was kind of neat. But the other piece is you said 97% were in favor, but I'll bet you it was still hard knowing that there was 3% that didn't want this to happen. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, either path forward of trying to continue as a congregation, trying to close. I mean, there's the different decisions that we had. There was not an easy one. And yeah, there were definitely, I mean, folks that were questioning. Okay, well, what's going to happen? Okay, now you're going to sell the property, and how's it going to get invested? And so yeah, I mean, there's always different views of things. Some people really cared about the building, and they're like, it shouldn't get sold. It needs to be preserved as a historic building, and who's going to buy it, and then for us, we really wanted a ministry or another church to get it in the building.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it was a faith-based nonprofit, or at least with faith roots, you could say, that purchased it. But COVID made it a lot more difficult. And there was at least one church that was interested, but it just wasn't going to work out. And so, yeah, I mean, you just, in leadership, it's always hard decisions to make. And some of it was just like, one of the analogies that one of our leaders shared was when you're flying in an airplane, and let's say you have 4 engines, and 1 or 2 go out. But you still have altitude, right? You're not in danger yet of crashing. You can take advantage of the altitude and momentum you already have with your 2 engines that are left to find your place to land safely. But if you keep going and you wait, and you're low enough, then all of a sudden that landing spot gets forced on you. And so that was some of the discernment for us was just realizing, okay, we don't have to close now. Like, yes, we have money in the bank. Yes, we have 100 people. But there was a sense of, okay, the engines are out. Like this closure will happen. Do we do it now when we have some flexibility and freedom to do it strategically, or does it get forced on us in whatever 1 to 3 years down the line? And I would say that I think COVID would have forced it on us if we had not decided it.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, COVID forced that on churches that were in pretty good shape, actually. So, yeah, that would have been a really rough season. But I think all this kind of, to me, I mean, I'm a pastor of a church on the west side of Portland, and it's hard to imagine our church going out of business, so to speak. But I think this conversation does make me realize how loosely I need to hold anything in God's kingdom, because we don't own or control anything. And I mean, shoot, for a church to have an 88-year run of life change, evangelism, stability, impact is amazing. And so, I think we can pause and celebrate that and realize that, particularly in this case, that it all was not lost. It was reinvented and reinvested. And so maybe that's where we can kind of move into, all right, so let's talk about, you took the resources from the, well, not you took, but it was given to create Brilliance Labs. Now, what kind of projects is Brilliance Labs doing that are an extension of God's kingdom?
Yeah. So I could speak to that second word of lab. And unless you're in maybe the tech startup space, that might sound like a strange word to describe a Christian ministry. But lab speaks to experiments, right? It speaks to creativity, not having all the answers, testing things, new discoveries and inventions. And so that's where the vision of saying, hey, let's steward these resources and invest them back into the kingdom of God in the city. Let's not keep them for ourselves. Like for Central Bible to have a 62,000 square foot building with multiple acres of parking lot that simply just were not used. Like we literally had moved from the 1,200 person auditorium to probably a 250 person basement is what we had done, and it was just unused, and the parking lots all unused because we were small. But what would that look like if those resources then were invested into the city? Then they're not going to be underutilized. They're going to be fruitfully applied to the kingdom. So that's where we basically sold the property and then formed an endowment structure to that could be then invested wisely into the like the stock market and into assets that are going to grow that endowment, and then create an income that can then be invested into grants and other programs that are going to serve the city. And so related to that, and this idea of
just to pause for a second. So what you now have is a sustainable, continued income base that doesn't dwindle. Is that right?
That is the goal. If you talk to anyone in wealth management over the last couple of years, they could tell you that the economy, like the 60-40 portfolio, had its worst year in decades. So yes, but that is the goal. And then we've said is we gathered a board of directors from both business, ministry, church. We have some folks from Multnomah Seminary that have served with us, and we've gathered this board of directors to help us lead this organization. And we said, let's take 5 years at a time and just say, we believe God's given us 5 years to invest this money and support church planting and other kingdom works and things. And then at the end of the 5 years, hey, should we keep doing this? Should we keep this as an endowment structure where you're only spending the income? Or is it time to just fully invest it in the city, entrust it to others' hands, and then kind of ride off and disappear into the background? And we're gonna just re-examine that every 5 years. And go as long as God seems to say yes.
That's interesting. You're kind of taking a different approach than a typical church would, because you're going, we're not thinking 100 years at a time. We're thinking 5 years at a time. I think that's kind of cool.
It's a matter of stewardship, and it's I don't want to assume that the money in the investment endowment is better used funding these micro grants and these smaller donations. Maybe God wants to do something, and that whole thing could be invested. I don't know. And that's entrusted to the board of directors. But we feel, because sometimes, parachurch ministries, they outlive their purpose. They kind of, or even happen in the nonprofit world, like you have a problem and now you're going to solve the problem. And all of a sudden you realize, if we solve this problem, we're all out of work. So let's just find a way to kind of keep the problem going, or pretend we're solving it, but never actually discover the cure or end homelessness right. So there's this whole industrial complex of social services that we just don't want to fall into that. We want to say, this is about the kingdom. We're serving the church. If the church ever says, hey, this is not the need, this is the need, then we want to be able to do that.
Yeah. Incidentally, I got to say, some people might be watching, listening, and maybe from the Portland area, and maybe they're in a situation like Central Bible Church was, where it's like, gosh, I don't know, how much longer can we hang on? What's cool about this conversation is just the thought, what if we reinvented these resources, the life of this congregation could be a blessing still in the future, in a different way. It's fun to see how this has bubbled up. So tell us, you mentioned micro grants and things like that. What have you done?
Yeah. So we've sought to build a granting program that is just very accessible to folks that wouldn't normally have access to larger foundation grants. And there's a whole industry related to nonprofit funding, and it can be really hard to get grants. You have to be really well established, and we want to be able to provide access to funds to new churches, maybe that aren't well funded through denominations or other connections, as we can believe in them, even if they're new or they're not well connected. we can invest in them there. Also, other nonprofit startups that don't have a bunch of history or experience under their belt, but are seeing a problem and are having an impact, and we can just say, hey, let's believe in you, let's invest, and let's make the application process really accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more highly relational. Like we try to build a network that particularly connects with people doing kingdom work, serving their own communities in under-resourced and diverse communities in our city, and try to go to those actually like community champions that are doing the work.
Okay, so almost like we were probably taught in Bible college that that missionary work really should eventually evolve into that, where you've got indigenous people leading a movement, and then we're supporting that. That seems like what you're really trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah,
cool. What's one of your favorite projects you've been able to be a part of?
Oh, that you're making me decide.
Sorry. What's one of the projects you've been a part
of? So just this last week, I went to a grand opening of a coffee shop in Rockwood that's run by a friend named Sam Caute, who's a North Indian believer who came here as an immigrant, didn't speak much English, and basically learned English and vocational skills by being a barista, and then realized, hey, this could be a really powerful tool for new Portlanders, people coming from overseas, to learn English, to learn social skills in American culture, to learn vocational skills. And so he started a nonprofit called Jubilee Hall that seeks through a cafe, coffee shop format, seeks to provide vocational skills to refugees and immigrants. And it's run by some folks that love Jesus and love their refugee neighbors and want to help serve them. And so God provided this amazing location right on Burnside and 122nd. And as they were doing the build out, they were just doing it by faith and needing to raise a bunch of money for this cafe location. And so we were able to give them actually a couple grants, helped fund their espresso machine.
Oh, cool.
And then did they have a vocational training program where they pay a stipend to the intern that's training with them. So we're able to pay for one of those interns to go through that training program.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that's like real tangible stuff that is difference maker kind of thing in the city. That's great. And I know I've heard, because we connected a lot, I've heard about some of the other stuff that is equally as exciting. Some of it with local churches, some of it with other kind of out of the box things like what you just mentioned. Are you able to leak anything that maybe is on the horizon that you're hoping to get involved in?
Well, let's see. I mean, I'm stoked about what we're doing with Multiply PDX. I could talk about that for a second.
Yeah, please do.
You don't mind me sharing some of that. So, you guys, so we connected probably over a year ago, and you invited me to come in, and I essentially brought some of that lab startup experimenting tools.
Yes.
I brought my beakers and my different things. Hey, let's do some experiments and let's do a design lab to help Multiply PDX kind of go to a 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Upgrade its offerings and do some rethinking of what you guys were doing. And so we did that almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
And we launched through that like a new branding and website. Are we able to officially talk about our new
I
branding
think so.
and website?
Yeah.
So we did that with Together PDX, and now we're branded with that great ministry, and then we launched a podcast, which I've some people have heard of. In fact, you're listening to it now. If you can hear my voice, and then finally we did these quarterly gatherings. That are going to be citywide gatherings. So we got another one coming up. Which day is it? The 20th?
October the 20th. Yeah, October the 20th.
Yeah. So those have been awesome. And then the new project that I'm excited about working with a couple folks with Multiply PDX, is a scholarship program for ministry families that need high quality, confidential, ministry informed counseling work.
Mm-hmm.
And just to make it as accessible as possible to church leaders, whether they're in crisis, or even just like, hey, you know what, I'm struggling with this issue, or I need some sharpening in this area. Be able to make high quality counseling available to ministry families in the city.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that too. I mean, because we've just heard over and over again, this is a real need in our city. We've heard it from church planters, those involved in disciple making movements, any kind of gospel multiplication. Like, it's a tough season, and it has been a tough season. So wonderful that this is coming together. And well, I'm just stoked, Ahshuwah, that you've been so willing to help find those really high impact opportunities and then channel resources to them. And I'm grateful. Been really fun to watch.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a joy. You and Pete and Brent and all these guys, they're great to work with.
Yeah, it's been fun. Well, hey, thanks for sharing with us. How can people get a hold of you if they want more information about Brilliance Labs?
Yeah, I would say, go to our website, brilliancelabs.org, and you can email us there. There's a grant application. If you're particularly a ministry leader, either church or nonprofit, you can apply for a micro grant. We also do community projects. So if you have an idea and you want to start something, but you're not yet organized as a nonprofit, we can also provide fiscal sponsorship for folks that are just trying to just getting started. And then we also have design and kind of startup resources and coaching and consulting we can offer as well. And we're looking for interns. So
beautiful. Yeah. Okay, cool. And if you want to find out more about the counseling initiative that Ahshuwah mentioned, you can hear more about that and get more resources for that at our upcoming October 20th citywide multiplication party. You can get more information about that at togetherpdx.org/multiplypdx. We'd love to have you there on the 20th of October. It's kind of like an evening, like hopefully date night style thing is what we're doing. So childcare, dinner, all these things. But we are grateful to be in the community with all of you. And thanks for hanging out with us for a session. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Jesus in the Upper Left. We want to ask you a quick favor. Would you please subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, and share with those that are in your life that might benefit from the content. Hit the notifications button, rate and review, of course, and then head on over to upperleftshow.com where you can find bonus content, opportunities to connect with those around the city that are doing similar work as you, resources to help you, and just a way to connect to the community. We hope to see you again next time.